And so, just for a little bit of historical context for you, in case you weren't aware, America has had a pretty bad racism problem for some time now. For starters, we enslaved an entire race of people for nearly 250 years. It's kind of our origin story. That, and of course, Native American genocide. You know, white supremacy in general. And nothing about America or its political history is going to make much sense if you don't start off with this fact. And in that spirit, it is important to understand that political arguments for austerity in America have always been marketed through racist appeals to white voters, a sinister sales pitch that implicitly promises white people a leg up in the social, economic, and political hierarchy. And no, I'm not talking about this guy who has infected our politics for the last 40 years. Not yet, at least. We will get back to that guy. In the meantime, join me as we pinball our way through the ages, because the political bond between fiscal conservatism and white supremacy goes back much further in our history. It is time for Racism and Capitalism, a love story. In her essay, The Austerity Politics of White Supremacy, Vanessa Williamson describes how this dynamic came to prominence during the Reconstruction era following the Civil War. She writes, "When the former Confederate elite mobilized to successfully overthrow the multiracial Reconstruction-era governments in the South 150 years ago, it was under the banner of fiscal conservatism." You see, during Reconstruction, political alliances between the formerly enslaved freedmen and poor whites with shared economic concerns began to form, resulting in the elections of government officials that proposed using tax dollars to invest in the social good, such as infrastructure, public education, and support for the sick and the poor. What the Constitution might describe as general welfare, and we couldn't have that. This did not sit well with the ruling class of landowners who didn't like seeing their taxes increase, or the people who they once literally owned, now in the seats of government power as elected representatives. Yet, because the former Confederate states were still occupied by federal troops who protected the voting rights of the newly emancipated black citizens and the politicians they elected, the wealthy elite found themselves in a conundrum. But efforts to maintain white supremacy in America have always managed to be incredibly resilient and innovative. These white supremacists developed a strategy of breaking apart this multiracial coalition by creating the political identity of the taxpayer. Williamson writes, "They focused their critique of Reconstruction on rising government debt and excessive spending, painting government by black people and poor whites as intrinsically corrupt. Adopting a new identity as concerned taxpayers helped the rich bridge the divide with small white farmers, for whom new land taxes were heavy, while avoiding explicit opposition to black male suffrage, which might smack of treason to Northerners." And even though, by night, they partnered with violent organizations like the KKK that intimidated and murdered black voters and politicians, by day, this group of concerned taxpayers used colorblind rhetoric to divide the burgeoning multiracial coalition in order to benefit the ruling class. Is some of this starting to sound familiar? Because to me, it sounds a bit like Paul Ryan's depiction of makers and takers, or Newt Gingrich calling the first black commander-in-chief the food stamp president, or when Mitt Romney said this.
There are 47% of the people who will vote for the president no matter what. All right, there are 47% who are with him, who are dependent upon government, who believe that they're victims, who believe that government has a responsibility to care for them, who believe that they're entitled to health care, to food, to housing, to you name it. But it's an entitlement, and the government should give it to them. And they will vote for this president no matter what.
And this motherfucker is probably the best Republican in the Senate today. How fucking sad is that? But news boss, you shriek. None of these people even mentioned race at all. They're just concerned about our out-of-control spending. The fact is that through code words and dog whistles, the very notion of the social safety net has been racialized for decades. Watch as former leading contender for the Republican nomination for president, Rick Santorum, inadvertently let the cat out of the bag.
It just keeps expanding. I was in Indianola a few months ago, and I was talking to someone who works at the Department of Public Welfare here, and she told me that the state of Iowa is going to get fined if they don't sign up more people onto the Medicaid program. They're just pushing harder and harder to get more and more of you dependent upon them so they can get your vote. That's what the bottom line is. I don't want to make people's lives better by giving them somebody else's money. I want to give them the opportunity to go out and earn the money.
During this era of colorblindness, Santorum knew that he messed up. He said the quiet part loud, so he quickly scrambled into damage control mode.
The other thing is I've looked at that quote. In fact, I looked at the video, and in fact, I'm pretty confident I didn't say black. What I think, I started to say a word and sort of mumbled it and changed my thought.
You see? He wasn't talking about black people. He was talking about blah people. Hey, thanks for watching that clip. Here's the evergreen end plate to ask you to like and subscribe. It's any day of the year where you are.